Imagine being thousands of kilometers into one of the most grueling hikes on the planet and getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Now, most people would go home. Lisa Belanger built a company. Lisa Belanger is the founder of Flat Out Feast. It's an Edmonton-based freeze-dried meal company built on one simple idea, and that real food for real adventurers shouldn't be packed with cheap carbs and sugar. So what started out as a personal solution to a very real problem on the Pacific Crest Trail has turned into an award-winning business that is changing how people think about backcountry nutrition. So Lisa, welcome to the Frozen Assets podcast, where we're focused on entrepreneurship and freeze drying. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, I think you covered it very well. Essentially, how this all started and what we're doing. But yeah, essentially, I was hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. I've always been super into the outdoors and loved doing, those more long distance treks and adventures. And when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I realized I needed to look for more low carb options to help me manage my blood sugar along with the insulin injections, and there just weren't any options. And so I started my own, and that's really kind of the basis of Flat Out Feast, is that adventure shouldn't be limited by what you eat. It should really be powered by it. And we're just hoping to kind of revolutionize the backcountry nutrition.
Yeah, I love it. And Lisa actually was here at the Freeze Dried Summit in Boise, Idaho, where I live. And there was the first annual Freeze Dried Summit. And Lisa and I chatted. She was showcased her product there for everyone to see. It was really awesome, Lisa, you bringing that. What'd you think of the summit for the first time, given that there
Yeah,
wasn't anything like that before?
it was cool. It was cool being there for the first one, and I kind of got the sense that it was going to be the first of many, and sort of this growth trajectory for, as people look to start more freeze-dried businesses. Yeah, so I think it was really cool to connect with people that were in the space.
Yeah. Like before you even connected with people in the broader industry, like did you feel like Flat Out Feast and your company was kind of isolated in Edmonton in terms of this freeze drying world?
Yeah, and honestly, it does still kind of feel isolated, especially in Canada. I think there's a lot less freeze drying going on, especially for something like meals or, human food products. And so it can feel isolating. But so it's nice to connect with people that here I connect with folks in the food industry in general, but that only gets you so far in terms of trying to get answers to your questions or just share with other people. So yeah.
Yeah, there's so many nuances to like the freeze drying technology because, it's a delicate product that you're packaging. And so not many people are like, well, I know dehydrated, but at the same time, a freeze dried product has a lot more susceptibility to different things. It's a little bit more delicate, things like that. But let's get back to just you as a person, Lisa. Give us a picture of what you're doing on a normal Tuesday during your work week as an owner of a freeze drying company.
Yeah, I guess kind of everything is the reality. It's pretty much just me. I have a little bit of help, but yeah, during the week, it's really just focused on. I'm always working. I'm always doing something. It kind of never ends. Whether it's packaging of orders, doing actual production, switching over freeze dryers, doing the marketing, the social media, trying to solve all the challenges and fires that come up, and also trying to looking forward and figure out how I'm going to continue to scale the business and everything. So that's day to day. It changes a lot. And besides that, I also volunteer. I'm the president of the Great Divide Trail Association, which is a super cool long distance trail here in Canada between Alberta and BC. And so the association maintains the trail and advocates for its protection. So that keeps me busy too. And if I have any time besides that, I'm probably just getting ready for the weekend and whatever adventures coming up. We do a lot of, my husband and I do a lot of, camping, hiking, dirt biking, rock climbing, all sorts of things. So we have a cube van that we converted into a camper as well. So love doing road trips, but that takes a lot of prep to pack and unpack. So that's kind of just what we get up to, and then prioritizing getting out on the weekends to have some fun.
Yeah. Now in the States, the Pacific Crest Trail is, it's a very long trail. You can look it up. But you said, you're part of this committee for a trail that goes from Alberta, where you are, to BC. How does that trail compare to like the Pacific Crest Trail? Are there similarities, or what do you like about the Canadian type trail, what it's all about?
Yeah, the Pacific Crest Trail is about 4,000 kilometers. The Great Divide Trail is just over 1,100 kilometers, but it's a lot more rugged in the Rockies. And so it actually follows the Continental Divide or the Great Divide between Alberta and BC. So it is super, super scenic, super beautiful. I mean, the Pacific Crest Trail is as well. I would say the Great Divide Trail up here is more remote. Is still, some degree of route finding and just a lot less people on it. So it is very beautiful, but honestly, I'm all for any kind of hiking trail and the opportunity to be in the backcountry.
Yeah, what's something that surprised you about hiking the Pacific Crest Trail that you didn't really find on blogs or other people's videos that you could tell people about what it's like?
I think nowadays there is actually so much info out there that you can check out, but it is different when you're actually there, how challenging it is, not just physically, but also mentally to be walking for 14 hours a day, every single day for 4.5 months, almost every single day. You really kind of have to want to do it and want to be out there and be ready to just enjoy yourself even when things are not going according to plan. Highly recommend it for anyone that's out there. And I think too, there's all kinds of different people that do it. You don't have to start out being super fit. You don't have to, be super experienced. There's people that I met that it was their first backpacking trip and they were hiking the entire Pacific Crest Trail. So anyone can really kind of get out there and give it a go.
Why why do you say you have to do it for, like, 12, 14 hours per day? Is it because the seasonality, like, you wanna do it right when the snow's melting, but also you wanna do it before the snow starts?
Yeah, exactly. There is a window there between like April to September. If you start too late, then the desert section in California is super, super dry and there's not a lot of water. And then if you start too early, you'll hit snow in the Sierra Mountains, which can be really challenging too. So there's kind of this sweet spot and a time limit to finish. And nowadays, too, we're seeing so many more forest fires starting later in the season. So if you want to really get a full through hike in and actually complete it, you have to be pretty committed. And I would say through hiking is a different sport from normal hiking. Because normally you kind of have time to just relax and stop whenever you want and enjoy it. When you're through hiking, it's more focused, I think, on the end goal, and you just enjoy it in a different way. I would eat while I'm walking, filter water while I'm walking, take photos while I'm walking, because you want to keep making progress, because you just have so far to go, and that's always in the back of your mind. So you just kind of got to get after it and hike for a long time during the day.
Yeah. Now, let's go back to 2019. You're hiking this long trail. It's strenuous. You're physically like ready to do this. You have everything mapped out. But what was the experience life of this kind of challenge that you faced with your health that made you be like, oh man, like I really gotta shift something, or like how did it throw you off just as a person and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, it was really strange how it all came about. I didn't even know what diabetes was really. It's not something I'd ever had to think about. But I was losing a lot of weight, like more people, more than anyone else. I was hiking around, I was super thirsty. I had these symptoms that I thought were associated with hiking. Obviously, I'd be thirsty. I was hiking, 10 or 14 hours a day and I'd be losing weight because I'm exercising. But it was sort of like extreme. So eventually it was 2 months in. I did end up going to a health clinic just to really, my question was, how can I gain more weight? I'm eating as much as I possibly can, but these are actually common symptoms for type 1 diabetes before you're diagnosed. So, anyways, they ended up figuring out that I actually had type 1, which is something that they don't really know what triggers it, but essentially some sort of environmental trigger, or it could be a virus kind of triggers it in your body where your body, it's an autoimmune disease. So, my immune system is attacking the insulin producing cells and we don't know what causes it. So it was challenging to hear that because obviously now not only do I have this lifelong, autoimmune disease that doesn't have a cure, it requires life-sustaining therapy and it is a lot of work to manage. But I also had to get off trail and go back to Canada and sort of sort this out because it is pretty complex. And I had to quit my job at that time. I had, so much planning had gone into doing this that was also really disappointing. But I think at the same time gave me a goal that to work towards to help me kind of get through the initial grief of the diagnosis, faster because I was so focused on, okay, I want to get back on trail. So I just need to figure this out and so I can get back to it.
And I personally don't have type 1 diabetes. I don't I've known several people, but I've always been curious, like, probably mentally it's a heavy load to be like, man, this completely shifts how I run my life,
Mhm.
basically. Like, I mean, do people go into depression? Like, are there a lot of like ways like that people don't deal with it very well? And like, how did you find a support system that helped you kind of, get through that big challenge right there?
Yeah, I think, everybody will handle it differently. And I'm just grateful that I had 25 years of my life without it before I got it. Because some people do get it as a kid, as babies even. And so, I was grateful for that. And but it is a ton of work. You have to make decisions, almost every minute of the day on whether for what you're about to do, is your blood sugar going to be going low, going high? What are you going to eat? What did you just eat? How much you need to dose? Other can affect your blood sugar. Like there's a million variables that you're trying to control, and it's impossible to get it perfect. But I've been always someone that's just very organized, very committed. I just wanted to get as much information as I could about it so that then I could move forward with managing it. And so, I mean, I guess I just did what I could and I had a really supportive, family and my husband as well, of course, but it's something that you do kind of experience. They can never understand
Oh,
in a
sure.
way really what it is. So yeah, it can be tough. And I don't, because I didn't grow up with it, I didn't go to the kids camps that are for, children with diabetes and things like that. So I don't really have people in my life that have it. So yeah, it can be kind of isolating, but I just kind of move forward with it. And ultimately, it's what led me to start Flat Out Feast. And so maybe there's a silver lining there.
How did you decide that freeze drying was the answer?
Yeah. So because the main thing that affects your blood sugar is what you're eating. And so it's when you're eating carbs and sugar, it will spike your blood sugar and normally your insulin levels. And that's something that I wanted to kind of manage as the biggest variable and look for low carb options. And that's when I found that they just didn't exist. So I was trying to do some multi day hikes. There was nothing that was dehydrated or freeze dried that was low carb. I ended up packing out like 10 pounds of cheese and nuts and pepperoni and like low carb things that aren't dried. And I realized that it was not going to work for me long term. I wanted to go back and do the Pacific Crest Trail. I had so many other plans that I knew that was going to be a real barrier. And so that's what prompted me then to first, I just wanted to make my own meals. Ultimately, started looking into getting a freeze dryer. And I think that's probably the classic experience of people starting a freeze dried business is going, that machine is a little expensive. I wonder if I could sell some product to try and recoup some of those costs. So that was really the initial idea and how it started. But because there was that gap in the market, I knew that other people would also be experiencing that gap. And I didn't want food to be a barrier to people's adventures ultimately. And I could see that that was an opportunity to fill that gap. And so that's kind of how it started. And I don't really even remember. I kind of went straight to freeze drying because I'd already, I'd had lots of dehydrated and different backcountry meals and things. And they do have often a reputation for not being very good. And so I knew that because I was really doing it for myself, I wanted something that was going to be a really high quality product, that was going to be delicious. And so freeze drying was kind of the only answer to that. And I wouldn't want to start a business or sell a product that I didn't fully believe in or love. And so it just kind of evolved that way.
Yeah. Now, you talked about having different types of meals. Like, what did you like about some of the meals that you previously had? And you're like, if I can modify it, I still want to make that same type of recipe or type of meal.
I don't actually remember a lot of enjoying these backcountry meals, to be honest. A lot of my memories were of, preparing one and then thinking it was disgusting and having to pack it out with me, and it was just terrible. And so I wanted to avoid that entirely and make recipes that actually tasted good. These were recipes that, things that I would make at home. They were essentially home cooked meals, and I wanted to have a good variety there. And so just worked through the recipes and lots of testing to make sure that they were delicious.
Now, let's talk about a little bit about your products, because one thing I really like about the direction that you've gone is you've you have like 5 staple type meals and you kind of stuck with just those. Tell me a little bit about why you haven't expanded like the mountain houses and the peak fuels where you have endless amounts of SKUs, which, there's all different varieties of different meals you can make. But tell me about, let's tell the audience a little bit about what those 5 meals are and then why you stuck with
Mhm.
just a limited SKU amount of meals.
Yeah, so we have 5 meals. We have a cheesy chicken casserole, which is like a cheese sauce with shredded chicken and mushrooms and spinach. There's a beef chili with zucchini, a turnip and beef shepherd's pie. So we're using turnip as like a low carb alternative to potato. There's a Cajun jicama and pork skillet, and a creamy chicken and cauliflower, which is like a mac and cheese, but with cauliflower instead of macaroni. So those are the 5 that we have. And the reason actually for keeping the SKUs relatively small in number has just been out of necessity. I would like to eventually, you know, create more recipes and launch more recipes, but when we're at a relatively small scale and trying to grow, the more ingredients you introduce into your process and sourcing and, different things you have to be preparing, it really complicates everything and can make it more expensive. So we've just been really trying to scale until we can get to a place that we can expanding that product line. I think it also makes it easier for retailers. That's feedback that I've gotten, is that they appreciate having a small number of SKUs. They don't have to try and figure out which ones are going to sell the best or worry about having, all kinds of different inventory. It just makes it easy for them to introduce it onto the shelves as well. So, for a few different reasons, and I think they've been bangers. They have 5-star reviews across the board. So, like, it's working. We haven't had to, phase one of them out or anything. But yeah, hopefully we are working on expanding the line a little bit as well as we grow.
Yeah. Now, does each one sell equally, or is there one that's like the flagship?
Yeah, actually, the best seller is the sampler pack, which is one of each. So that's usually what people want to pick up. They just want to try them all. And otherwise, the cheesy chicken casserole is always a super favorite. You really can't go wrong with like a cheesy sauce and chicken, honestly. But yeah, they all do sell fairly evenly right now.
Yeah. And how long have you been freeze drying in general?
So I bought my freeze dryer in 2020 and then sort of had the conception of the business throughout 2021 and getting all the approvals and then launched selling in January of 2022.
Okay. So it's 2026 now. So you've had about 4 years of really fine tuning this. Is there like a secret sauce to making freeze dried meals taste good?
So part of it is that we do actually prepare them as meals before freeze drying them. So we're not just repackaging dried ingredients and then throwing a spice powder in there. And so that does help make it taste good because as you know, freeze drying does maintain the original taste and texture almost completely. And so if it tasted good going in, then it's gonna taste good when you rehydrate it. And so I think that's really at a base, and that is harder to do it that way. I can't just source a bunch of dry stuff and then repackage it. That would certainly be easier, but it does make a much better product because we're creating them as meals.
Yeah, when I did my guacamole cubes experimenting, I have a lot of different ingredients from like a ranch kind of like spicy seasoning to jalapenos to the guacamole to tomatoes and red onions. And I wanted to see what it would actually taste like. Would it hold the flavor in there? And sure enough, it did result into that. The mixture when I rehydrated the guacamole cubes that were freeze dried, it was actually a little bit more of like a zest,
Mm.
immediate flavoring. So it was very tasty, and that I love experimenting with those types of things.
Yeah, it is fun, and it's crazy what you can come up with, and sometimes I'm surprised at what doesn't come out very good and then what does come out amazing. Even in just the way the meat is prepared or shredded makes a big difference, whether it's like ground meat or cubed is, very different. So just little nuances like that.
Yeah. Now, when you first started freeze drying, you said, you bought a freeze dryer, then you started experimenting. But how did you know? Was there a pivotal moment that you can recall where you're like, this is actually really good? I definitely think that this is going to be a business that is going to thrive. Was there a singular moment or was there certain things that you can look back on that can give us a glimmer of when that aha moment happened?
I think it started early with just making meals and giving them to friends and family and getting feedback, and everyone really loved them. And so that's kind of the starting point. And you don't really know how it's going to go until you start to sell them. And so I just took it one step at a time, got the packaging done, put a website up, just I wanted to see how far I could get with it. And ultimately, the response was really amazing. And I think that's when it clicked that this was something that was really needed, is that the customers really love it, like, not only with all our great reviews that we get, but people will email me specifically to thank me for making this product because there was nothing else out there for them. And they, cheer me on and hope that we continue to grow. And it's those personal connections that I think makes it like really motivating to keep going when it's really exhausting to be doing it ultimately. But it kind of, reaffirms that it is needed. People are loving it. And yeah.
Yeah. Now coming to it's definitely needed. I definitely can tell that you put a lot of effort into your recipe and everything like that. Very passionate in this. So, but freeze drying as an industry is relatively new for a lot of people because you've had a lot of the major players in freeze dried meals, like the brands I've mentioned with Mountain House, Peak Fuel, those types of ones. So, what surprised you so far about the freeze dried food industry? Like, once you're actually now 4 years into it and actually have a business full time?
Yeah, well, first off, what really surprised me was that I was the first person in Alberta to apply for a food handling permit for freeze dried meals. And so, even just to be able to start the production and all of that, the regulators didn't know what it was. They didn't understand the technology. They said they had never dealt with it before. So, it actually took me a better part of a year to get it approved, lots of back and forth and run around with the regulators. And I was surprised by that because obviously freeze drying's been around for a long time. They were trying to get me to like prove the food safety of freeze drying. And I said, I didn't invent freeze drying, like I'm not doing that. There's academic papers about it. And so that was really surprising just getting started right off the bat. I've been surprised also at how many products actually are freeze dried that don't say they are, that you don't think about. Something even like instant coffee, I had never considered. And I think there's so many applications for freeze drying that we don't always think about. But I have been really surprised by how challenging it is to scale ultimately. And I think you're right. The industry is or has been dominated by really large producers. And if you're not able to make that jump to being a massive, production operation where there's not a lot in the middle, there's not a lot of people operating kind of in that mid scale, and there's not a lot of resources, and there's a lot of barriers to actually doing that because it's a fairly expensive process and you need the space and everything. So that has been really challenging. And also, going into it, I didn't even realize how you don't think about how regulated the food industry is and just all the barriers that come along with specifically having a food product. If I had chosen any other business, it probably would have been easier than this. But I think that naivety can be kind of a superpower because you just one barrier at a time, and then you get so far into it that you can't go back.
Yeah. Yeah. Food is, I mean, it's definitely, it's not for the faint of heart or people that just
Yeah.
kind of, I think that's what we're seeing in the industry a little bit from all the people that I talk to is there's definitely, it's a good thing, actually. I feel like the industry is kind of shaking out the people that probably were not the best fit for a food type of business. It was easy to make candy and kind of sell it at a farmer's market or kind of expand. But once you start dabbling into actual food processing with the freeze dryer, you really do need to be fully committed to it because skipping different things or trying to take shortcuts, you can do that. Anybody can take shortcuts. I think the mistake, I think what's the right word? I would say the downsides to making those shortcuts, especially in food, could be completely devastating for your business. I mean, you could go bankrupt because you get people sick, or you also find out that you can't actually do things and stay small. You can't cook something like you had to have these different places. Now, just given that it's kind of a smaller industry, but it is growing, at some point, you kind of figure out as a founder and, and an owner of a business that you can't do everything by yourself. So, when did you start looking for other people, and did you find people in Canada and other provinces? maybe even in the States? Where did you find a connection that really helped you?
Yeah, I definitely would say that all of the more major like breakthroughs that I've had have come through a connection, a referral from somebody, a conversation from me sitting at a computer and Googling for, whether it was finding a new supplier for an ingredient I was really needing, finding a production space, anything like that. I think those connections are so important in that network because I have found, anyways, in the food space, a lot of the suppliers, production facilities are not necessarily advertising online. They don't really have a presence. They're almost impossible to get a hold of or find. And so those connections are really critical. I think along the way, I was just trying to solve everything myself. Like I was doing all of my own marketing. I created the website, I was doing everything myself. But it gets to a point where if you scale enough that you're getting past that home, home use and just selling out of your house or whatnot, where you can't do that anymore. And so it really came at the time of scaling that I had to kind of really branch out and figure that out because there isn't, I know you've talked before on your podcast about using a co-manufacturer to help you scale with freeze drying, which is usually a great option for a food business growing. The challenge
Yeah.
is that doesn't exist in Canada, the co-manufacturers like that. So I don't have that option. And so now that's really when I started trying to branch out, trying to find other facilities that maybe had extra space that I could use, or, just trying to get answers on how the regulators approach a certain thing or what the rules actually are.
Why is that? Why do you think there's not a whole lot of, like, toll processing and, like, co-packing facilities in Canada?
I think just in general, Canada is a smaller market than somewhere like the US. And so I don't know. It takes more, maybe it's riskier or there isn't the scale necessarily that people are interested to go into that space. And maybe traditionally, I think, there's a ton of opportunity there for that reason. But there are some in Canada that are toll freeze drying or producing products, but it's focused on pet food, berries and vegetables. They have a couple people doing meals, but they're not co-packing that I know of. The real challenge was around the meat because my product has meat in it. So as soon as you go away from something just like candy or fruits and vegetables and you start to introduce meat or even dairy, I think the regulations are a lot more strict. The requirements are a lot higher. I was actually never able to do it just out of my home. I had to go straight into a commercial facility because of that. And so those are all barriers that, you have to look at.
Why not just purchase, the proteins, the meats from an actual freeze-dried facility that's making that in bulk? Has it not made financial sense to do that, or has it just been a challenge to find that and in Canada proper so that you don't have to pay the importing fees?
Yeah, kind of both. One was the cost of trying to buy pre-freeze dried product is a little higher and harder to source in Canada. And when I did reach out to some, they were really, really high minimum order quantities that just didn't make sense. It was like a container full of one product kind of thing. So I don't know if there are more options now, or if, of course, maybe I just didn't find them. But that was part of it, is the feasibility. And the second part is just the quality of the product and the taste. Some of my meats that I'm using in the way that we process them, I haven't seen anyone else doing or selling at a large scale. And so that's part of it too, is I don't want to sacrifice the quality of the product and the taste and everything. Sometimes we are, like I mentioned, we are cooking the meats together and with all of the ingredients to make it more of a meal rather than repackaging dried things. And so that's challenging to do. Like you can't source that.
Yeah. It's one of the most common questions, Lisa, that I get asked by pretty much people all over the US is, people are wanting kind of an all-in-one processing partner because it is tough to like make your own food like you're doing, which you have great recipes, you have great meals, but you do need to scale. And it's like I only have so much space and time to make the meals, then freeze it, then freeze dry it, then package it. I think it's coming down the horizon, but I think it's going to take somebody who's an entrepreneur that understands how to make a business work profitably for them to do all those different steps, but also not be it so expensive for someone like you to have that service be done, because it's got to make financial sense for you as well. I think it's coming down the pipeline, but I it's just not there right now, which is a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, if I can give people a hint, is to think about it differently too. You might not find a producer that can do your entire process from start to finish, but you might find somebody that can do part of it and that can help you scale in certain ways. So I've been working with a co-packer. They never did freeze drying, but I provided them with a freeze dryer so that I could leverage the larger facility they had, all the cooking equipment they had, the staffing and all of that. I could leverage that while just producing my product there as a subset of their operations. So things like that can be an option, even if you can't find someone that can really do it from start to finish, or if you maybe there are certain ingredients you could source in bulk and then other things you freeze dry yourself, but that means you have more time in your own freeze dryer to do the things that you need to freeze dry yourself. So thinking about it that way, I think, is where I see the potential for growth and the potential for more people to get into the space, because it is very hard to jump from 0 to 100, but there's different ways that we can kind of scale and be creative with it.
Yeah. And speaking of scaling, what do you feel like has been the hardest part growing Flat Out Feast, or the thing that kind of keeps you up at night or slows you down?
Yeah, I think it's that scaling question, because it is very hard to make it sustainable at a small scale. I think it's good place to start. You have to prove the market, prove the demand, get feedback on your product. But I think this is probably common across any food product. I mean, scale is where you can really start to make sense of the unit economics, because the facilities are very expensive, all the permitting, et cetera, the quality control that's required. So scaling is tough. And like I said, because there isn't an obvious co-packing option that I can go with, it can feel like a big jump. So that's something that I've hopefully coming close to cracking the nut on that one. And I think too, just being like essentially a one woman show. And of course, I have a ton of support from like my family and my husband, and I have a part-time staff now and everything. But, ultimately I'm doing a lot of it and was doing all of it for a really long time. So knowing what to focus on when there's so many things that need doing, and then you have to focus on the production and actually getting the product out the door. So you're trying to think about what the future of the business is and how are you scaling and keeping on top of that, on top of trying to have an online presence and do some
Yeah.
marketing. So it's just there's so much going on. And I think that's just an entrepreneurial challenge that any entrepreneur has.
Do you feel like you can have a successful company that makes you a full-time income and not have to be a huge, massive brand that has hundreds of thousands of volume? Can you make it in freeze drying doing that?
I think you can. I think it really depends on your product and what the margins are. And I think that is something to really consider for anyone starting a business, whether it's this or any other type of business, is like, what do you want for your life and your lifestyle? Like, what's actually going to work for you? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs go into starting a business and then there's all these external pressures of what you should or shouldn't do with your business or what's even required to make it successful. And then often people will burn out completely. And so really think about what you want. Do you want it to be a multi-million dollar operation? Do you want to, is there a certain number that you just need as a salary that you'd be happy with and you'd have your lifestyle balance? I think those are important things to consider. So it's something that I've really toyed with as I scale and trying to figure out at what point is this really going to be feasible? How big does it need to be? And is that actually what I want for my life and the commitment that comes along with that? And I think there's nothing wrong with saying, no, that's not what you're in for. And that's not where you want to go. But I think there is opportunity to make it work at a relatively smaller scale or mid scale that you can be happy with it.
Have you found the answer yourself? Are you satisfied with what your in goal is in the next 5 to 10 years with the business, or are you still in flux of what this all looks like?
So I think I have a clear idea of what I'd like it to be. It's just been trying to see if I can make that happen ultimately, and what opportunities come around, whether I can do it or not. So there have been times where I've decided to shut it down. And then the next day I
Yeah.
wake up and I'm like, no, I can't. There's so much still that I want to try and do and like see where I can get with it. So I know where I want it to be, and I think I can get there for sure. I think with enough time in the space and talking to different people, and it is definitely getting better. And even since I started, 5 or 6 years ago with the idea, freeze drying has become so much more common. Now you can get freeze dryers at Costco. That was never a thing before. And so I think that momentum in even just home use of freeze dryers is going to be great for the industry. People have asked me, are you worried about the competition? Everyone's got a freeze dryer these days. And I am not worried at all. I think it's amazing that people are now understanding more what freeze drying is, how great the products are. And realistically, not everyone's going to start a business doing freeze dried food. I know how hard it is, and it is hard. So I think it's just great for the industry all around. And we're going to start to see so much more innovation, especially for small to mid scale companies that are more nimble and able to try new things and really innovate in the products.
Yeah. Now, Flat Out Feast is a great brand. I want to ask you, just as a business who's you're doing all the operations, you're figuring all these things out too, but have you found that there's a way to grow a brand versus just think that it's just a marketing side of things? Like how have you been able to grow a brand in freeze dried meals? And is there maybe some advice you'd give to people on what you've done well that you kind of figured out has worked?
Yeah, I think in terms of building the brand, it really comes down to establishing and keeping the trust of your customers in the quality of the product and what you're delivering. And that's kind of the root of it. I think there's a lot that goes into the visuals and making sure that it is attractive. I think packaging does make a big difference. So it is important to spend time on those visual aspects because it's what might draw somebody to it the first time around to try it. But ultimately, in order to keep your customers and really get that word of mouth and the referrals is by having a really great product and not compromising on the quality at all. I hold myself accountable in my own work and everything, but ultimately to the customers. And I think I always will either, reject a batch or reject product if it's not good enough, even though that costs me money, because I think the brand depends on the product being the best it can be.
Yeah, and your products won some awards. So tell us a little bit about that award and what that meant for you.
Yeah, I won the Made in Alberta Award for the best prepared meal in Alberta in 2024. That was for our Cajun Jicama pork skillet. It was really cool to see that or to, receive that. I think it was nice to see that the innovation was being recognized and appreciated because it was a product that people hadn't really seen a lot before. It gave confirmation that I was doing something worthwhile, but also gave a lot of exposure and connections in different ways, a little bit of credibility there as well. That it was, just not just me saying it was good and all my friends. It was really truly a good product and something that was innovative. So yeah, that's been really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Now, when someone opens up one of your meals on a trail, what do you hope they experience in one of those first few bites?
Yeah, I hope that first few bites just make it all worth it, hiking up the mountain and having packed it on their back all the way there. I hope that is the best meal they've ever had ultimately and that they don't regret packing it up. Yeah, I hope, and I hope people feel good after eating them, that they feel energized. They don't get a stomach ache or whatnot from the meals. It's just an honor to be along with people on their adventures. I think it's so cool. I love receiving photos and seeing where everyone's at. I ask people at the checkout on my website, where they're going. I want all the trail recommendations and things like that. So yeah, I hope people just have a good experience with it and also get to enjoy them in really beautiful places.
Yeah. And you live in Edmonton or around that
Yeah.
area. For people that aren't familiar with Alberta, give us kind of like what does the geographical landscape look like in Alberta compared to like South Alberta, and what's the population and what do people like to do?
Yeah, well, if you look up like a map of Alberta, it's kind of a weird shape and it has that squiggly line, which is the Rocky Mountains. And so we have the Rocky Mountains on the west kind of border of Alberta. We share that with British Columbia. Really, really beautiful, world renowned, mountains. And then as you move farther east, it turns into prairies. So I try and go west as much as possible to the mountains. But where I'm at is essentially in the prairies. I'm about 3 hour drive away from the mountains, but still, it's beautiful all around. And I just do a lot of driving to get out there.
Yeah. And is Calgary and Alberta, are you in competition like city wise, and like who's innovating what, who has the best companies and the best obviously hockey's very popular there with the Oilers, and I don't know who the Calgary team is there, but
Yeah, the
yeah,
Flames.
the
Flames versus the
Flames.
Oilers. I think definitely hockey is probably the biggest rivalry that we have. Yeah, it's always been a joke. Yeah, ultimately the rivalry between Edmonton and Calgary, but I don't think it's really that true or it's really that bad. we share, industry across the province. And so ultimately, I think Edmonton is a little bit more industrial. It's where the work happens, where Calgary is maybe where the offices are for those same companies. That's just my, really simplistic impression. Calgary is lucky being a lot closer to the mountains. It is beautiful there.
Yeah. Now, when you look at the next 3 to 5 years of your company, what excites you about where your company's headed?
Yeah, I am really excited. I think we're seeing so much momentum in the demand for the products, excitement around having a Canadian made product because there are so few. And of course, Canadians are really starting to turn more and more to locally made products. So we're excited for that growth, the continued momentum there. Hopefully eventually exporting as well to the US and elsewhere. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to build a bigger team as well, have even more purpose behind the company itself, not only in being able to support people's expeditions and all the cool stuff that they're doing, but as a company being able to bring in more people and give them learning opportunities and to really build that community and team for ourselves. I mentioned before, looking forward to launching new products too, all kinds of different things that have been in the works in my brain for a long time, but and so that'll be exciting as well and give people more variety. I do have people reach out and ask, "When are you launching more meals? We want more new different things to try." So yeah, I'm excited for that and just more adventures to come. I went back in 2022 and restarted the Pacific Crest Trail, hiked the entire thing and successfully completed it, eating my freeze-dried meals. And I think there's just so much more to come with that too. And that's really why I want to continue building the business in a way that fits with my lifestyle as well. So I don't have to sacrifice those things.
You and Colin, your husband, will be coming out to the summit. I want you to, what are you excited most about, the second annual one? And can you give people a taste of, what do you really like about it? And what can you tell people of why they might want to come to an event like this?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see the progress even from last year being the first year of hosting it. I think a lot of people ended up missing out if they didn't come. And I sort of realized after the fact that they wish they were there. So I'm excited to see all those people join. Hopefully, a lot more businesses have started even since then for people to talk about what they're doing and share with people. It was such a great place to network, to also be able to see some of the freeze dryer manufacturers and talk to them, talk about the technology. There's a lot more options coming out. And so, yeah, all around just a great learning opportunity and place to build community around freeze drying because it's like not necessarily an easy space to build a business in. And there's very
Yeah.
few resources, I think. And I think the resources you have in your podcast and channel are amazing. And so let's just keep doing that in person too.
Yeah, what'd you think of Boise? People are like, "Boise, Idaho, why are you doing an event here?" That's what people mostly told me. But when you got to Boise, what'd you think of the town and what there was to do?
I thought it was awesome. Actually, we drove down in our cube van, camper van, and but it's actually a beautiful town, city. Is it big enough to be a city?
Capital city of
There you
Idaho,
go.
yes.
Yeah. I don't know my US geography very well. But no, it was beautiful. The river, with the river trail, we went for a walk and we camped. We actually ended up sleeping in our van downtown in a parking lot and had no issues. And
Nice.
so yeah, no, it's a great place and there's waterfalls nearby there. I forget what they're called. But there's a lot to see actually, pretty nearby around Boise. So make a road trip out of it. That's what we did. And we went to visit a bunch of national parks on our way back.
Yeah. Well, I always like to end the podcast with a couple of rapid fire questions. So these I didn't tee up to you, Lisa. So you're going to have to answer these off the cuff, but I won't throw you off too much. But my first question is freeze dried food actually cheaper than getting groceries and making it yourself fresh? Or is that just something we tell ourselves?
Wait, in terms of buying freeze-dried food or making it ourselves?
If you like made the meal, but like and you look at, like, the leftovers and all that type of stuff, is it actually cheaper than groceries, or is it something we just tell ourselves that it's cheaper?
I think it can be cheaper. I think we get to save more food, right? Less waste. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's about the same.
I think it's about saving the food waste.
Yeah,
It's like if you can save basically well, 1, you can't backpack fresh food for 7 days or even like the Pacific Coast Trail, like, you can't just pack in 2 months of strawberries. You can't really do that.
exactly.
But with
Yeah,
freeze-dried strawberries, you could freeze dry 4 months worth in a matter of maybe a couple of weeks, and then you could put those all across the Pacific Coast Trail, right? So that's a way. Another question is hustle culture dead or did it just get soft? Kind of a play on words on the freeze dried
Oh
side of
my
things.
gosh. I don't think it's dead. I just hope that, like, I mean, I'm hustling, but I'm also not doing it at the sacrifice of everything else that I love. I think there's a balance there. So I hope that that's where it's gone, where we can still hustle and work hard, but you can still play hard.
Next question is what does the Pacific Coast Trail teach you that no business school ever could?
But that you don't need to shower as much as you think you do, and that you just don't need a lot to survive. You can live off of whatever you can carry in your backpack as long as you can stop in a town every week or so to get some more food. But life can be a lot more simple than people think, so it's important not to overcomplicate it.
Is the home freeze drying business starter trend dead or is it just going through an evolution?
I feel like these are trick questions. I feel like the home business starter, freeze drying business starter is just starting almost. So not just starting, but really kind of hitting a momentum and a wave there. So yeah, I don't think it's dead at all. I think I'm excited to see what comes out of it because we need so much more people in the space doing cool products.
What is your real answer when someone says the timing just isn't right to start a business?
It's never right. I mean, it's never going to be a perfect time, and I don't think you could possibly even know when the right time is because there's so many variables and different things that go on. So it's best to just start and maybe start small. It's always a good way to just start small, do it on the side, and just see what happens. Experiment.
Well, we've been talking with Lisa Belanger from Flat Out Feast. She's in Edmonton, Alberta. She's going to be at the Freeze Dried Summit 2026 in Boise, Idaho, September 20th through the 3rd. If you want to come to that event, go to freezedriedsummit.com. You can also check out all of her information products. Go purchase one of those sample bundlers. I've got the links in the video description as well as the description of the podcasts. So check out more podcasts of freeze drying entrepreneurs in the playlist coming up. Lisa, thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you in September.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.